Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, which is good because with the challenges that we have in the BIM world on the architecture side specifically, you can't have a single BIM manager or a single software developer or a single project architect fix the situation or figure out workflows. You have to have somebody. That's why when these unique skills or unique skill sets really come into play. That okay, so I have professional experience as a project architect. I have written software for a very long time, and I've played, I've been part of a BIM, what is it, ecosystem or whatever you want to call it in the past couple of years. So I think it's one of those. These people are the ones that can figure out better workflows and see the bigger picture overall for a company. And that's why most of the companies out there are quite they have a little bit of trouble figuring this out because I think they don't apply the right skill set to it. Most of the times when you don't get something right, it's because you haven't seen the big picture. It doesn't mean that you have taken the wrong steps. It's just, or you have made mistakes in the steps that you have taken. It's just that those steps you took them without seeing the full picture. So you went out of the way a little, and then wasted time and stuff like that. And now you have to correct course and come back and whatnot. So
Could you give me? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was just saying that the bigger of a picture you see is going to be better for long term.
Sure. Could you give me an example of what one of those bigger picture ideas is in a firm, as opposed to, I guess, getting lost in the details? Like, what's a practical example of what you just described?
Well, one of the very typical decisions that you have to make as a BIM manager is that whether you want to adopt a piece of add-on or a software or not.
Mm-hmm.
When you see the bigger picture and when you know the challenges of you almost have to be on the business side and understand what are the challenges in your business that you're going to have them over the course of, let's say, next 10 years. Where do you want to be? What kind of product are you producing? Because all these stuff, you have to see them as an architect, as a software developer, as an architect to kind of know what your end product is, as a software developer to know what you can achieve in-house and when you cannot achieve in-house, and as a BIM manager to understand the BIM side of this thing and say, like, how much of this actually helps you. To kind of figure out whether do you need to adopt this piece of software or not. It could be something from, I don't know, it's very simple Keynote Manager. Do you want to do this? Or, I don't know, a clash detection add-on for Revit, or a new piece of software completely that helps you with coordination or lighting calculations, stuff like this. To be able to make decisions whether this should be part of a workflow or not. And then on the software developer side, you understand that if you develop software, then developing software, when the software starts working, it doesn't end. Right. It's all maintenance after that you have to provide. So you have to count that in basically the goals of this company, because you might not be there forever. So do you want to make this company dependent on a piece of software that needs a software developer to maintain? Or you want to go outside and buy something from outside, or you want to find an open source solution, stuff like this. So there's a lot of things around these subjects that touch these three different areas, whether BIM, architecture, or software. And then I think these skills they can help with this kind of stuff a lot. The other part of it is that one of the other bigger challenges that I had back in Tesla was training.
Mm-hmm.
That's also very helpful. We figured out these workflows and solutions and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you don't want to, I am for people, not for processes.
Okay.
I'd rather train the people and find the good people and everything else rather than creating workflows that are the checklists and stuff like that you have to follow. Because I know that I'm not the best person out there. Maybe somebody else has better ideas of how achieving stuff. So as long as you can, put the fitness criteria, that these are the performance criteria that you want to achieve, these are the goals for the business, make the best rational judgment that you can make for the work that you have to do based on these goals that we have to get there. And then when you let them loose, they'll invent new ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to get there, you really need to have a really good definition and understanding of what business you're doing. What's your end goal? What are your challenges? What's your biggest threat in the next couple of years to your business and stuff like that. And I feel like most companies and people don't really go there because that line is not very clearly defined.
Sure.
Because if you know exactly what you're doing and what your challenges and threats and goals are, then you can prepare and train people or hire people with the right qualities that can make the right decisions instead of creating processes that we figure out if you do these 5 steps, we'll get there. No, there's like per my experience, there's never a guarantee. I'd rather have really good people that I'm willing to work for and I would work with, and that gave me excited, to go to the office every day to work with them, than setting up too many processes and workflows and stuff like that. I'm getting a little bit off topic, so correct me whenever.
No, that's I do have so I've been very excited to talk to you because I feel like I'm seeing what I want my career path to be. I guess animated through people like you. I guess I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am going to graduate school at the University of Texas at Arlington. I got a bachelor's of architecture there. I'm getting a master's of architecture there. And about midway through my bachelor's degree, I learned how to do renderings. And that just made me fall in love with what the computer was capable of. Yeah. And from there, it's been, okay, well, now I can do renderings. What about real time? So game engines got involved. Okay, what about VR? What about AR? And now I'm starting to see how digitally, if you don't understand programming and computer science concepts at a certain level, then you're missing out on a lot of options that are out there and available to you, such as pyRevit. That's something that you can actually alter your workflow in Revit with by understanding a language that's beautifully simple. Yeah. So that's something I'm very excited about delving into and learning.
Yeah. And that was the whole goal behind pyRevit. pyRevit never was supposed to be just another add-on for Revit with a bunch of tools in it. I even put it in the title on the GitHub repo that this is a rapid prototyping environment for Revit. You have an idea for a tool that can, change your workflow. And as an architect, as an engineer, I understand that most of us don't know C#. Most of us don't want to deal with compiled languages and debugging these applications and stuff like that. pyRevit gives everybody with understanding of Python a platform to do whatever you want to do inside Revit. Almost 99% whatever you want to do that you can do with C#, you can do with Python in Revit. It gives you a very simple way of doing these kind of stuff to basically sketch out the tool that you want to make in a tenth of a time and figure out if this helps or not. I think that's, or just, quick fixes, even like, batch processing stuff in Revit and whatnot. So you can use it as the scripting language that Revit never had.
Yes.
So that was the whole purpose behind this. And the toolset that it comes with is a showcase of what it can do. Like, see, you can do all these stuff with it. That was the whole purpose. I did a presentation important a couple of years, 2 years ago, and one of the ladies in the presentation was actually working for a software company that develops add-ons for Revit, and I was telling them, and she asked me, like, do you put all this stuff out there for free? What is for us to do? And I right then I told them that your advantage is that you use a compiled programming language. It's more efficient than what I do. You provide support for the application that you make, and you have a customer base and everything else. What I'm making is open source. I listen to comments and try to do fixes and stuff as much as I can, but my number one priority is something else. That's my job. So it's vastly different from what professional programmers and professional third-party developers for Autodesk products are doing. But that was exactly the whole thought process behind pyRevit. That I'm making these tools and this platform. Let's just share it with everybody and let them unleash their thoughts and ideas and.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I see some parallels between. I guess which came first? Did Dynamo exist prior to pyRevit?
Yeah.
And did you see that as a solution that was messy, or what called for pyRevit to come to be besides Dynamo?
So you mentioned something in your email that I'm gonna touch upon again. I'm an architect. And I'm sort of an idealist.
Yes.
If I want to go out there and buy a tool for myself, I'll go find the best tool I can find that can do the most things for me, that can help my workflow. In other ways, I'll go buy the most generic tool that I can buy out there because I know for that investment I get the most return out of it. I don't go get a specific wire cutter, for example, that's designed for cutting very specific wires. I'll go something that has more holes in it and more that's adaptable for different types of wires. So it's more generic. I can type any type of wire with it. I love the concept of Dynamo and on the same side, Grasshopper in Rhino.
Mm-hmm.
They're visual programming languages. Grasshopper obviously is much more complex and powerful, arguably, but they're sort of like sitting on the same side. They are visual programming languages or environments, let's call it. They're for a different set of people. Therefore, the people that generally have no experience doing programming, and it's much more visual, you can see the results a lot faster and stuff like that. And per my, we'll talk about this a little bit more detail, but it's really good for solutions that you need to play with the result and adjust it. Like for example, you want to design a mesh over your building, or I don't know, let's say a specific ceiling with like boards cut in a certain way and stuff like that. You need an interactive environment that you can go and adjust sliders and change the shape and play with it and stuff like that. So you almost create this machine for yourself, mathematical machine for yourself with some knobs and controls that you can play with to, come up with your design. Instead of cutting this out of foam and make like 20 different models, you have, because of your mathematical capabilities and the software that you're using and everything else, you can create this machine for yourself that you can play with and come up with your final design, or let it figure out the design for you. But I feel like there's a very important part of this is that interactivity. It's very important. Dynamo and pyRevit are completely different things.
Yes.
Dynamo is perfect for that solution because it doesn't matter if you are connecting to me. It doesn't matter if you're connecting nodes or you are throwing a Python node in there and write a script. The way you get to that interactability and the mathematical model doesn't matter to me, really, honestly. It matters to some people because it's simpler to do it that way. So Dynamo has that added benefit that you can throw, the pre-planned, pre-programmed logic components, nodes, and connect the results to each other, and get somewhere wherever you want to go a lot easier. But for an experienced programmer, writing a program is a lot faster than connecting the dots.
Yes.
And the end result is reusable, which is important. Like when I write a function to do something for me, it goes into go to the library, and I just call it in any other software, in any other script that I want to use it. You can say that you can do this in Dynamo too, but it takes a lot more time than writing a program and throwing a module that you already have created. So the way to get to that interactivity, yeah. It doesn't really matter to me. It's just that in Dynamo you have that 3D environment that you can create. Dynamo Studio could operate outside of Revit also. You don't even need to work with Revit. You can do whatever you want with it. I think the major difference between pyRevit and Dynamo is that Dynamo showed up a couple of years before Revit. I saw it and I loved it. I played with it at that time. I'm like, this is not really as powerful as Grasshopper, and I've used Grasshopper extensively. And I'm like, well, let's not use this. And I started working with Revit more in a production environment, and I needed like batch processing tools and stuff like that. And I knew Python already. I've been using Python for the past like 10 years. And then I'm like, okay, so let's figure out a way to bring Python into Revit. And I found the Revit Python shell project. And I'm like, oh shit, this is amazing. But the problem was that when you write a script, you have to go open the Revit Python shell, set up the environment first, make sure you have the right selections and everything. Open the script, run it, and then, there's something went wrong, do the same thing again, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, let's figure out something. Like the first version of pyRevit was just one single script that it was attached to Revit Python shell on the startup. Then it would all my other scripts, and it would create buttons in the user interface. And I rewrote pyRevit over the course of like the past 3 years 2 times, completely from scratch. To make it more powerful and more inclusive, and create the extensions that other people can add their own content to it and stuff like that. It's not the best code base, obviously, because it's just work of a single person. And my knowledge of and understanding of Python got a lot better during this past 3 years.
Sure.
And things that I do now is a lot better than before, but those bad crap codes are still somewhere. I'm not saying it's best, but I'm going through, like, trying to clean up stuff. Like right now I'm working on the new installer for it, because the installer pulls the stuff from the Git repository, and on the very unreliable Windows environment on everybody's machine, depending on what kind of the world it's running on, what kind of language they're using, whether they have a dot in the username or not, it just behaves completely differently.
Right.
So like these kind of stuff are, I'm working on, but the progress is kind of slow. But that's basically just to compare. That's where Dynamo and pyRevit are to me. pyRevit is a very good environment for rapid prototyping the application that you want to create, the add-on that you want to create. You can use anything. You can use WF forms, WPF forms, all the logic, everything else, all the C# modules that you created for yourself. Even if, like, for one of my projects, I developed a C# module, and then I used it in the pyRevit environment to sort of like just provide a testing environment, because I had the core logic sitting in there. There was no doubt there was testing completed for the core logic. I just wanted to bring it into the environment of Revit and then create a bunch of windows for it and start playing with it to see, how to design the user interface to this core logic. Mm-hmm. And then you can do this super quickly. And then once you're done with it, once you're satisfied, it passes your testing and everything else. Maybe at the end of the day, if you start using this for a year or so, maybe you decide, okay, this tool saved me 500 hours last year. Maybe I spent 10 hours or 40 hours this week. Write it in C# completely. There's no thinking involved really, because you already written the code. You just have to rewrite it in a different language. Maybe optimize it and use the other language features and whatnot. But basically, you just convert it to a different language to make it more efficient and more memory efficient than everything else.
Okay.
That was the purpose behind pyRevit, really. And then that's where Dynamo stands for me. I have not had the opportunity to go into generative design and advanced architectural design concepts yet with the companies that I work for. So I never had a big use case to use Dynamo. Mm-hmm. My use case was mostly around stuff that I did in pyRevit, batch processing things and figuring out how to do new things and convert things and whatever, these kind of like more intensive tasks, I guess, and less interactive.
I would love to see, I guess, more people learn written programming because of what we touched on, in the sense that I tried to learn Grasshopper and Dynamo for much longer than it took me to learn Python fairly well.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because everyone groups their nodes differently or doesn't really understand what a conditional statement is. I don't know how to do a for loop or a while loop in Grasshopper or Dynamo, but in Python, these are all fundamental things that you learn off the bat, and then you can immediately put to use. Yeah. And as soon as I had those concepts down, I went back to Grasshopper and Dynamo, and I felt like I understood it so much more. Yeah. And you can also share Python code on places that computer scientists or people in the programming industry will go and look, and they can help you troubleshoot, as opposed to just architects that only know Grasshopper or Dynamo. And I felt that that was something that was very useful.
Yeah. So just a quick counter argument. When you're comparing Python to, let's say, Grasshopper ecosystem, right? I would say learning just the Python itself, just the vanilla Python, is like opening Grasshopper and just understanding how these basic nodes work.
Okay.
Because once you start getting into other people's extensions and add-ons, it's comparable to all the other modules that other people have developed for Python. For every module, let's say Flask for web development, you still have to get into understand how that module works and how program that and stuff like. So there's that learning curve exists for every extension that you want to add to any of these, whether it's a Python with its module extension or it's the core Grasshopper and an add-on extension for a series of other nodes. The cores are still the same, the core functionality. You still have nodes that you connect to each other with like wires and stuff, and that's equivalent to the workflow control and everything else inside Python, or how you create variables on the standard data types and whatnot. I would say that, but to some extent, learning Grasshopper and using Grasshopper is easier, because let's say you want to run, you can within a day you can understand the basics of Grasshopper, and maybe another day you can
Mhm.
learn to understand I don't know what is it genetic algorithm add-on, like I forgot its name, but there was an add-on that you can add that you could Galapagos or something like that, I think it was, that it basically can generate designs for you based on a genetic algorithm. To get to that to work in Python is going to take you a lot more time. And
Sure.
then you have to understand stuff like how to memory manage. Like I'm collecting all this information from the model. You can't just throw, after a while you just realize that you can't just throw everything into an array, because the array takes space in memory. So now how do I manage memory? How do I release memory? All this stuff, all this core computer science stuff that you have to get into. But for me, that effort is worth it, because then at the end of it, I'll have a Swiss knife that I can do anything with. I use the same programming language inside, while I was working at Tesla, I use the same programming language, Python, inside Revit environment, inside Navisworks environment, outside of these two on Linux systems and on Windows systems, basically doing, completely different things, but using the same language. I get to understand the nuances of these. Like I know that I'm in the Revit environment, I'm running Iron Python, and the way the multi-processing works in Iron Python is vastly different from the way it works in C Python. But still, the core features of these languages are the same. But because I know it, I can do, like for example, for a project, I did some of the processing inside Navisworks environment, and I exported stuff into different format, and I went in and used C Python, completely different script, to take the rest of the process, because I needed to be more memory efficient and I needed to use all the CPU cores and everything else. So using the same language, it gives you this whole range of different things that you can do. If it was in a Dynamo environment, and that solution, that workflow was never possible for me. Because I have to write a piece of it in Dynamo and then go figure out how to write the other piece in a different language. Then you have to know two completely different things, I guess. So personally, I'm always attracted to more generic, broad solutions. That if I know Revit's API, I can pretty much do everything inside the API that Revit allows me to do. So I don't have to do it through Dynamo. I want to have direct access to it through C# or Python.
Very cool. What are some of the most useful pieces of, I guess, what are some of the most useful implementations of pyRevit that you've seen in the community?
So pyRevit doesn't have a system to track installs or see who is using it for what purpose and stuff like that. So basically all the feedback that I have is coming from people that have reached out to me for issues or compliments. They told me that we're using in our firms and stuff like that. But so far, what I've understood from all these, feedbacks is that there are a lot of companies out there in the world that have started using pyRevit because of its core tools, like the hatch creation tool and some other like model cleanups and stuff like that. And a lot of them got excited about this and actually started doing their own extensions. So like one of the biggest examples of this is WeWork. WeWork is one of the companies that started using pyRevit as its in its core, but they developed a whole tool set around it to make their for their own specific purpose to auto-generate drawings and stuff like that. I don't know much details about it. I saw some presentations in Autodesk University, but there are really good companies out there that have realized this is a good workflow. Especially companies that we work that have a lot of like other programmers that already know Python for web development, for front end or back end and stuff like that. But to teach them, the only thing that you have to add to the workflow is to teach them how to use the Revit API or the Navisworks API and stuff like that. They also benefit from this a lot. But there's a lot of people out there like us too that work for architecture engineering companies, and they figured out, oh my God, if I can write these two scripts, it's going to save me, 2 hours every day putting all these tags and stuff like that. So most of the feedbacks that I've got is around these topics. I don't know much details about them, honestly, like what is exactly people are doing. I would love to hear back and see how people are using pyRevit. there are a couple of friends that I had that I'm in touch with, and they developed like a pyRevit MEP extension for some MEP tools and some other like generic aligning and other stuff tools. But whatever that they have developed inside their own companies, I don't really know the full extent of it, honestly. Based on the feedbacks that I'm getting, is a lot of people are using it for developing their own extensions, and they're pretty happy about it.
And I know you don't know a lot about how they are using it exactly, but would you say most of these extensions are not necessarily for form finding or mass generation, but more for like maybe data collection or things that architects still have to do?
Yeah, I would say most of the stuff that I've heard about are not around design and form finding and stuff like that. They're more about workflows and processes and get things done faster and automate things and around that kind of topics. Maybe there are some stuff. When I'm talking design, I'm specifically addressing architectural design, like a more it's not very well defined. For engineering design, there are a lot of tools that I've created that just does the mathematics and applies the right numbers to the components that you have created, or connects the pipes correctly and stuff like this, or tracks how these, like what are the missing valves in this model and whatnot. I think, yeah, most of the stuff that I've heard that people are using around these kind of subjects, data collection, batch processing, automating stuff, these kind of stuff, or very clear cut engineering designs and whatnot. I have not yet seen any extensions that uses pyRevit dynamically, like the way Dynamo works. For most of those stuff, I think it's a lot more natural for people to just use Dynamo because all those frameworks already exist.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you go about keeping up with your own learning? How do you sit down and, I guess, brush up on your programming and find out what to look at next?
So, there are a couple of things for me that they're basically the trigger points. One of them is that I have a list of websites and feeds that I follow, and through them I learn about like new things that are coming, changes to the APIs and stuff like that. And those are the triggers that, oh, this thing is new, let's put it on the list to basically go and learn it. And I have a list of stuff that I really want to learn around different subjects and around different topics. The other part is that the feedbacks that I get from the community and stuff like that they want to do something, or the triggers that come from work. There's a new challenge that we want to do this, and I need to go do some research and learn and whatnot. I would say based on the workflow that I've created for myself, the task management system that I have, there are two learning types that I do. One is for work learning, and there's just the outside work, basically long-term learning stuff that I think is valuable to me to learn. Like Python itself was one of these projects way back when, like 10 years ago. It was on my own personal learning side. I'm like, oh, if I learn this, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can do. Eventually, these two skills are going to come help each other. Either whatever you learn outside of work is going to come help you inside work, or whatever you learn inside work is going to help something else that you're learning outside work. But basically, I have a list of these things, and then there's an app that I use. It's called Timelines, I think. Let me see if I can find its name. Yeah, Timelines. It's on iOS, and it basically helps me record time. So today I sat down and worked on pyRevit for 3 hours, and I record that time. And this way, at the end of the week, I can take a look and see how much time I've allocated to learning, to pyRevit, and to work and other stuff. And I try to keep a reasonable balance between them, and I try to keep like my week at least have a couple of hours of learning every week. I'm trying to do the same thing. That's like personal learning. I'm trying to do the same thing at job too, because like for example, my personal belief is that if you're working for 8 hours at your office, you're not supposed to work for 8 hours at the office. Part of this is also learning. So like I have a decent amount of time allocated to just researching and learning, new things that can help you down the road, because you will save those hours for sure when you actually get to use those skills in work. The only challenge is that you have to create your own fitness criteria, your own list of things that you think is valuable for you, like the core values that you basically define. To basically say, when you see something new, decide, is this possible that you're going to use this in the future? Whether you should, how much time you should spend on this, learning this, how much of this do you really have to learn for it to be able to useful to you? Like there's new programming language called NIM.
Okay.
While I was back in Tesla, I was like, oh, okay, so this is super helpful because it has a very similar syntax to Python, but it's also a compiled programming language that compiles to C, so it's super memory efficient and super fast. So I started like dabbling with it, and I created a couple of tools with it, but that was it. And I know that I needed to like create 2-3 tools that do this specific job for me. So I never really went beyond that. I spent a couple of hours learning the core basics and stuff like this, and that project basically ended right there. The only thing that I do for myself is to just make sure that I keep really good notes of these research and whatnot. So if in the future I want to go back to it, there's a folder that says, sometimes I even make videos about the project that I did for myself only, and I throw it in the folder because this way when I go back to it, there's something like 20 minutes that I can go and watch and see what exactly I did and why I did it that way and stuff like that, and then you get back to it. But those are for the stuff that that it's just for this project. I'm gonna do it now. It probably is gonna sit in my folder for like 2 years until I get to a challenge that might need this again.
That's interesting. So you'll almost make tutorial videos for yourself.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, one of the things that I started doing back in Tesla was we set up a YouTube-like platform. It's called Microsoft Team, and we started creating all tutorial videos for everybody, and I throw them, and people loved it. Like for the tools in pyRevit that I started developing, make videos for all of them, explain how each one of them works and stuff like that. And people started loving them, especially the new generation. We are born in our life using YouTube and other video platforms and stuff like that. It's a lot natural for me to watch something than to go through an article and try to figure out what's going on and whatnot.
Sure. So when you're at a firm or at a place of work, especially an architecture firm, are you one of the only people at that firm that has the skill set of being able to code and program and make your own tools, or have you found other people along the way that do the same thing?
So let's give Tesla as an example. Massive engineering firm.
Mm-hmm.
Almost everybody knows how to program at some level for their specific tools. I was the only person that had this specific skill set, part of the architecture/engineering background and knowledge of programming for knowledge of generic programming and knowledge of programming for Autodesk products that we're using. So it's the use in a lot of firms. We see a lot of people that know programming, but it's just those right skill sets that matter. Like what combination of skills that you have that makes you very suitable for a very specific job to do. In our industry right now, there are very few people that can actually write code, know architecture, engineering, business, and the challenges and everything else, and can sort of like do this thing really well. A lot of people are adopting this because they're seeing the value, but mostly when like previously in the past couple of years, when you talk about a BIM manager, it had a traditional definition that this person knows how to buy and adopt softwares and workflows and stuff like that, and basically provide support to the team and whatnot. But it never included actual software development or tool development. They might write some scripts for deploying new software and stuff to the office staff, but it never honestly included anything around programming. But I'm one of the people that I think that I'm arguing that this skill could be a lot useful as well because of just time saving that it can do, and that's something that I'm trying to train the industry for, to see the value. Programming was a massively different environment 15 years ago. Those languages was a lot harder to use. You had to know a lot more core knowledge of computer science and how to manage memory and use disks and everything else around it. But programming languages have evolved insanely over the past 15 years. You can learn Python right now. I almost use Python as my calculator when I'm at work. Like the Jupyter tab is always open. Because there's always something that you want to do or the math that you want to do. I have scripts for architectural code stuff that I just put the numbers in and it spits out the rest of the stuff for me. Because why not?
Yeah.
Why do I have to? I browse through the code one time and I turn that into logic and I use it forever. Why do I have to do this every time? But this is something that in our industry, in the architecture industry, is very foreign. They're used to just buying stuff. But software is magic to them still. They're still, very used to buying it from outside world. And they have, because of this, because there's no, like they have never seen the advancement in, let's say, astronomy in the past 15 years and how they have adopted Python in their workflows. Like every astronomer these days knows how to use Jupyter and Python and to use NumPy and SciPy and do scientific packages. Every data analyst knows how to use this these days. And we are one of these industries that is still sort of like in the dark ages when it comes to software. Very few of us know how to use, how to even write, Lisp code for Autodesk, for like AutoCAD and stuff like that. We are not really used to it. And I blame the software industry for part of it because they had this niche market that they're like, we can make so much money out of this. Why do we want to give everybody these advanced tools and whatnot? The other part is that it's architecture and engineering is such a hard job to do, and it doesn't have a lot of financial reward. So it's not as much you don't have as much incentive to save time, let's say. Like one of the challenges that I had in the architecture world was that I can show you that I can do this and save 20 hours on this project. And then the manager would say, well, what I'm going to do with that 20 hours that you saved me? Because I'm happy. I've already given the schedule to the client. The client is happy with the schedule that you're giving them. What's the benefit of this added 20 hours? And we have allocated everybody on different projects. So if you save 20 hours, it's not that I can move them to a different project for that 20 hours. So basically, they won't have anything to do. And I would argue, no. They can spend their time going through magazines and learning new things and work on design more. You can create a new iteration on your design and, make something better. But for a lot of companies, there's very few incentive. That's why it's harder to find these positions in companies. You have to find the right environment that has the incentive to basically able to invest on you for this kind of stuff.
So that's really interesting. Do you feel like people are almost is it the people that are hesitant to reach out and learn coding on their own, or are they just ignorant to it, or is it more the firms you see?
So there's a big example in architecture that if you create a grass field and don't put the path in the right way, people will find the path. Will just walk on it, and then after a year, you figure out the path, and you put pavement over it, and that's the perfect path because that's the one that people take. I blame the systems mostly for these inefficiencies because it's not a single human being. It's always a collection of human beings with different authorities and responsibilities and stuff like that. And people are only willing to navigate through this to basically take the path of least resistance. Most people are like this. Very few people are actually there to fight with their managers and manage up and try to see the workflows and change everything and stuff like that. Like I'm not saying there's not. It's just that by density, there's fewer of these. That there's people that just want to take the path, least resistance path. So I really blame the system for this. This just combination of these people that create that inefficient result. To fix this, you just have to move people around and fix your team. That's what comes down to it. It's nothing about the single individuals. It's just that combination doesn't work. It's just like, whenever you're creating a soccer team. You might have amazing players on this team, but the result is inefficient just because the team doesn't work that way. So you might get rid of one amazing person and then bring a couple of others and get better results in your team. Just because the teamwork is different. And you have to create, like soccer works around very rigid rules. When you come into a professional environment, the way you create different connections and authorities and stuff like that between these people. There are all various types of connections that you create between these nodes, and those connections affects the workflow of how the work flows through this team, right? So you also have to be smart about that. You might have a team of 3 people that you can't change, but by changing the connections and the way the authorities and everything else, then the outcome might be completely different. So if you want to look at it as a graph, it's the nodes and the edges that you can make changes to change the outcome. It's not about the nodes or the edges itself, any individual one of these. It's just about how these combinations are going to work. That's how I'm seeing it, honestly.
So, would you say that it would be beneficial for everyone on a team to have knowledge of programming, or do you think it's better that you have a few specialists in the office, such as yourself, that help figure out how to use that as a tool?
Yeah, so the example that I always give is that I'd rather have people that are knowledgeable about various sides of this business or the task that they want to do, but they are really good at 1 or 2 of them. So you have a person on a team that's really good programmer. Let's say even a BIM team, right? You have a person that really knows the Autodesk software really well, has connections and can get better prices and everything else and whatnot, and can figure out the workarounds around bugs and stuff like this. You have a person that's really good at software and everything else. You have a person that's really good at, let's say, point cloud, 3D scanning and stuff like that. And you have these various skill sets. But I would argue that it's really good if they understand each other's work as well. So that person that works with the Autodesk software knows a little bit of programming. That person that does the software knows a little bit of the software side, and these kind of. You can basically improve this by providing a really good collaboration environment between these people that you can sit down and talk to and teach each other things and stuff like that to improve make these connections more powerful. But I don't think everybody at an architecture office should know programming. Most people don't need it.
Sure.
If you have like one person at a firm, at a fairly small firm, it could do almost anything that firm requires to do. But it would be immensely helpful if that software programmer, engineer, understands the architecture side. That's the biggest challenge. You can't just go and hire a CS major and put in an architecture firm and expect to have good results. No, because he or she needs to have understanding of how the business operates and what are the challenges to be able to make the right decisions. Because if you don't know those specific criteria and the importance of and the weight of each, then your judgment is not. You might argue that I made the best decision with the knowledge that I had, but the challenge is that you didn't know the things that you need to know exactly with the right weight and flavor to be able to make the best judgment possible. So
that was actually
things.
No, that was actually a direct question I had. Was someone that is a pure programmer. What is there any benefit to having a pure programmer in a firm?
So let me give you an example. Let's say there's a BIM team in a large firm, architecture firm, that there's a person that does software engineering and he knows the side of the business very well. So there are these 2 needs at that company, that we need tools, but also we need people to write those tools that understand how we do business, right? These 2 needs. So you have one person that's covering this side really well, the business side really well, as the management of that BIM team, and you have another person that's a pure software developer. Working collaboratively, they can achieve these 2, they can cover these 2 areas pretty well. So I would say it's just counterbalancing. If you have a person in a firm that's a pure software developer, you're covering one side really well. But there's one other side that needs to be covered as well. So you put another person maybe that's really good at handling Autodesk software, for example. And then the collaboration of these 2, they can teach things to each other and learn stuff from each other. The collaboration of these 2 becomes that node that basically handles this whole thing. So yes, there is possible. It's just that, is that firm capable of paying 2 salaries for that task?
Okay.
It's really these questions. So seeing the bigger picture and going through the business. How much money is the firm willing to spend every year on developing tools and making sure everything works smoothly and stuff? For larger firms, they can have a team of 4, 5, 6 people. I worked at a firm that had one person just for the AutoCAD environment, because they had so many different clients that use this, and each one of them had, different requirements and stuff like that. They had a massive code base that needed to be maintained. So it makes sense for them to just have one person that just works around AutoCAD. He didn't know anything about the Revit environment, but he was perfect at using .NET programming and Lisp for AutoCAD environment. It really depends on, I guess you can exactly define what makes you happy and what you want to do, and then go find the company that has that environment for you.
Okay. How does someone like yourself, that I feel like can do architecture, can do programming, can do engineering, how do you choose? How do you say, this is what I want to do at this company?
So I'm by heart. So one of the things that I did over time is that I went through my subconscious and I figured out, okay, why do I love programming so much? Why do I love machines so much? And I realized I have a what you call the yellow personality. I like systems. I like workflows. I like to make some. I like Swiss watches. And I like to see that this thing, you make something and it works like a clock, and then it saves you time and you just let it. You just leave it and it works perfectly for you. I'm a systems person. So at any job, at any position, any challenge that I'm given, the most exciting part of it is setting up that system for me. So one of the things that throughout the past year I learned a lot about myself too. So the way I adjusted everything, like I wrote down a couple of things for me that are the most important for me in the past couple of weeks, learning the lessons from the past year, is that I need to be able to create at whatever job that I have, whatever thing that I do spend most of my day at. I need to be able to create, and I need to be able to learn. If I have these two, then I'm super happy. And to be able to learn, it means that you need to be challenged, because you just can't go learn by yourself for no reason. We like to be challenged, and through the challenge, go and learn the things that we need to solve the challenge for and stuff like that. And then the result of that challenge is the creation. So if you have this loop inside the work that you're doing, then it's very rewarding to me. Every person, I think, is vastly different, but that's critical for me. The moment I lose one of these at my job and the thing that I'm doing, I get bored, because it's like either too much creation with no learning, which basically means doing the same thing over and over and over again, or there's too many challenges. Then you don't ever get to see the result of what you're doing. You set up challenges and it's good for like 2 days, and then everything changes. Like, okay, so why did we achieve here? So there's two massive sides that the business can go to depending on what you're doing. But to me, is that if I get these two at a job, then I'm pretty happy about it. Obviously, there are other things too that I like to be able to work with the people that I'm working with, and they like what I'm doing and they trust me and everything else, and I can gain their trust. And I don't know, everything about a job that you have, then everything goes into does it have the right location for you, right city, right environment, right pay, and everything else. But these two are the ones that are I'm more adjustable with the pay if I can get these two. These are like top priority. Like I took in going to the company that I'm working at right now, I took a pretty big pay cut as compared to what I was doing before. But I get more in return on these two sides, because they're more important to me at the end of the day.
Sure. How do you factor in to your position? Like you have all these skills, and you may be focusing on some other aspects at your current job than others. When you're sitting and negotiating what you're worth, how do you have that conversation?
So I'm going to tell you something that I learned by experience. It's a little bit cynical, honestly, but it kind of reflects my experiences in the world, in like having jobs. It never happened to me that my employer sat down in front of me and said, "Esan, you were amazing last year. I'm going to give you a 30% raise." It never happened. It's always by proving your value in a way that is understandable to the employer. Very popular way of doing this is by getting job offers from other companies. So if you're working for a company, they're paying you X amount of money and you have a job offer for 2X, then they might give you 1.5x. Then you have 50% raise. That's how you can basically prove that I have more value, and there are other people out there that are seeing it. So it's like a kick to the employer that, see, I'm more valuable. But a lot of employers will say, well, maybe you should go there because I don't want to spend more than X amount of money on this position. I know you're doing something more and you're more valuable and stuff like that, but the software engineering side of you, I don't really need it. Okay. But for me, that's one part of it. And the other side is that I collect data as much as I can. One of the things that I did in the past 2 companies is that I had an Excel spreadsheet of different tasks that I do, different projects that I did, whether they're simple tools or add-ons or one-time tools and stuff like that. And I wrote down in communication with the team, asked them, like, how much time did this tool save you? How much time do you think this tool will save you over time, like every day, over a week and stuff like that? So I put some numbers in and I show them that I've saved them that much money. Because I've learned, like, money and time, they're pretty much equivalent to each other when they go into business, and they're super important to every employer. So if you can show this, then you are liquidating your value into some number that's more understandable. Mm-hmm. And they say, oh, okay, so that's important. But that's only one side of it. The other side is just to get to know people. Like the company that I work for, and I'm going to work for right now, I know some of the people there, and they know me, and we worked together a little bit before. So there's a level of trust that they have in me, and the way, the things that they know about me and stuff like that. It's a mixture of all these, but it really helps if you can network and get to know these people at whatever position that you are. Let's say you're, in whatever city that you're in and you're working for a company. It really helps to be part of the community and meet other people and tell them about the things that you do and stuff like that. This way they hire you by word of mouth, basically. In the past 3 jobs, I've never showed a resume. I've never did a resume for mine. I just had the interview and I told them this is what I do and blah, blah, blah. And I gave them the examples and I showed them that, this is how much money I've saved other companies and stuff like that. And I got the job. I think it shows in you, when you're excited about what you want to do, and, the things that you have done just because you were excited about it. I think it just shows that this person is valuable, that it can change something. That it can make us better, because it's batteries included. Mm-hmm. And it has a good track record of stuff that they have done. I feel like resumes are a plan B always. Mm-hmm. That firm wants to hire somebody, they don't know them, they have no idea what they have done before. The plan B is that, okay, so let's ask them for a list of things that we think is important. Per my experience, I've hired people for firms before. Per my experience, resume really doesn't have any value. There are some stuff in it that are valuable. Maybe there's a very good company that I work for, very good projects and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it shows very little about your personality. That's why they put emphasis on designing your resume too, to reflect who you are. Like my resume, the last resume that I had is very systems oriented, and it shows like it's got timelines and everything. It shows that these charts and graphs and these kind of stuff, I care about these things. Mm-hmm. That would be my 2 cents, I guess. Networking as much as you can, being excited about what you do, keep a good track record of stuff that you do so you can present them. If you have 2 hours doing something, there's always a good saying that if you have 2 hours doing something, spend 1 hour doing it and 1 hour presenting it. Documenting and presenting it, I would say, because it's really important. You're going to come back to it in the future maybe, and it would be incredibly helpful if you can easily present it and explain it to somebody that has no idea about the whole premise. Those would be the most valuable. Like I'm pretty active in fairly active in the Revit user group community in Portland. Mm-hmm. A lot of them know me. I do presentations about pyRevit. I ask questions, help other people setting it up and stuff like that. So these connections help me. In the past couple of years, every job that I wanted to, I've gotten tips and stuff through this community. Yeah, that would be, I guess, my 2 cents.
Okay. So, and I know, so coming from an architecture background, there's the resume, but there's also the portfolio. And when I'm thinking portfolio now, I guess for you that would be maybe a list of your projects or those graphs that you've presented.
Yeah.
It's less of like a rendering or something of that nature.
Yeah. Every time a friend asks me about this, I'm saying that design something that gets you through the door. It's really the interview that gets you hired.
Okay.
Make something that gets the employer excited about the things that you could do, the potential. Don't put too much information in there because pretty much nobody's going to read them. But put enough that gets them excited, and then you get to interview, and then in the interview they see everything about you. A lot of employers do testing too. Like you might have to do tests for Revit knowledge and stuff like that. But that's what basically gets you hired, is that this is the person that we can trust, see how he's excited about different things. Every question that I throw at him, he provides a logical answer, and it seems like he knows his stuff, what he's doing and stuff like that. And then he has a good understanding of how we do business. He doesn't just want to be here do cool stuff. Like he actually cares about the business as a whole. Because at the end of the day, we're a business. We need money, we want to deliver on time and everything else. Those are the stuff that I would say. So if, like as a person, if you as a recent graduate, if you're coming out of these out of the university, there are two paths that you can take. Either is create a standard resume and go for an entry point job at any firm, or what I always did is that I defined what I wanted. Like on top of my resume, it says who I am and then what I want. Like this is what I want to do. Do you have it? Can you offer this to me or not? And this is just vastly different premise for employers. They're like, oh my God, okay, this person is different. Well, let's see what they have to say. So a lot of times it actually gets you the interview.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then you like back into the past 2-3 companies, I defined my own position. Like Tesla didn't have a BIM software engineer position. I went there and I showed them what I can do and everything else, and they basically we defined it there. This is the purpose of this person, and these are the stuff that he can do. And now when I left, there's a position that somebody can apply to.
That's cool.
that didn't exist before.
Yeah. What are some other industries that you think architecture could pull from? Not necessarily just programming, but I know I think architecture can learn a lot from photography, film, games. What are some things that you think architecture is missing out on right now?
One of the biggest things, I guess, is for me is the understanding of the architecture world of the how people really operate. There's always a push. Well, based on my experience, there are a lot of architecture companies that are really good at this. But I feel like throughout the years of architecture business, doing the business and making money and saving time and delivering on time and everything has become more of a priority to architecture firms than to actually deliver a really good building.
Okay.
You go through the design of a building, everybody on the team is amazed and excited about it, and then it goes through the VE process, and the building that gets built is a completely different thing. And half the time, I don't even want my name associated with that building. I helped designing it, but it's not what I wanted. It's a completely different thing. And there's a huge disconnect between the two, and it happens for a reason, because these people that are actually designing it don't exactly know how this building is going to get built and used. A lot of the push comes from the developer side. The developer or other third-party companies decide how many units this building needs to have. They do the market studies and everything else, and they decide how many units it needs to have and what quality they need to be at and stuff like this. So I feel like architecture companies need to focus on these stuff a little bit more to be able to understand the way these other sides of the business works. They didn't exist before many years ago. Like right now, if you want to build a residential complex in downtown Portland, there's another firm that tells you how many different types of units you need to have and what kind of first floor businesses you should have and everything else. Like the architecture firm really doesn't decide on any of these. They just get numbers and they're like, okay, so let's make these units fit in this building. Not everybody is like this, obviously. I'm just saying that per my experience, like a lot of architecture firms need really to look into how do these people do these calculations, like understand this better. Why did they arrive at these results? To be able to question it, to be able to question the developer and say, no, we don't think this is the right approach for you. Let us design a better building. Let us make this, in a different way and whatnot. It's not always about like doing the work and being automated and make it faster and everything. It's just one side of this triangle. Mm-hmm. The rest is the quality and the time that you're seeing. It's not about money always. So I think it's one of those things that the architecture firm needs to spend more time and learn from him and see other even architecture sides. Like I don't know, I used to work in senior housing a lot. Let's look at other types of buildings. Let's learn what they're doing in their buildings. Maybe we can adopt it in our buildings and make it better as well. But a lot of times this team that designs these certain types of buildings becomes a machine that just generates that kind of output. Mm-hmm. A lot of times they're recurrent clients. There's a client that builds this building in this city and they want the exact same thing in another city or a very similar one. So you get to work on 5 projects in 5 different states, but they're pretty much all the same. Mm-hmm. They're very minimal changes or innovation and stuff like that. I think that's very critical. I feel like a lot of the architecture firms in this business has lost that innovation and creativity in it. Mm-hmm. I think, I don't know, I don't have anything on top of my head, but I think it would be incredibly valuable if you can bring that back into the architecture business. Like one of the generative design movement. Like, oh, we have these computer tools. We can do this. Let's figure this out. Let's design a completely different scene. And you see like a vastly completely design shows up in restaurants and all the other like these specific architecture types that can adopt that kind of design. You can see that showing up there because they're excited about it. Oh, we never seen this before. We never even knew that this is possible. I always give this example of a water feature that they did in one of the I think it's Hyde Park in London. That's just a loop, and they designed this sort of like a water path out of stone, and they designed it through software, and they exactly engineered how the water is going to sound going through these pebbles and breaks and stuff like that, cracks and stuff like that, and they CNC'd the whole thing, and they built it, and it's something that you never would have done using just pen and paper. Mm-hmm. It's an extra thing that you can do because now you have a lot more advanced tools. But you have to educate the architecture world that these stuff exists. We can do these things. And it's only right now it's limited to very few firms that they use, and we can do all these kind of projects. But I think everybody can benefit from it. It's not something that only few firms should do or can do.
So you've made an argument that is really interesting to me because most of the time when I hear something about generative design or anytime people feel like the smallest amount of control is being taken away from the architect, that's when they get scared that buildings will become monotonous and will just keep repeating themselves and just be the same urban sprawl that you see across. But you're saying that by using generative design and by using these tools that we have, we can actually create buildings and building types that we haven't thought of before.
Yeah, theoretically. I mean, you are still bounded by life safety codes and everything else around it. There are many other aspects to this building that you have to conform to, but it doesn't mean that every ADA approved bathroom should look the same. And I don't think that we should think that way. We have a lot more advanced tools in our hands this way. It's not like everything you talk to an architect, they basically know Revit and other softwares and a couple of other things, and that's it. Those are the tool sets in this toolbox. What I'm trying to argue is that this toolbox is a lot bigger than what you can imagine. There's so much more out there that you can use to help you create better buildings. And if you argue to me that we don't have time, then I'll show you ways to save time to be able to spend more time learning the new tools and trying new designs, new ways of designing something. Like that design machine that I gave you the example for, that's one of my passions. That let's say you want to design a facade for this building. You will start on pen and paper, you sketch something out, but you know at the end of the day, this needs to be a functional design, and there are criteria, there's mathematics behind it and stuff like that, and we can put all that in an algorithm that generates this facade for you and gives you variables that you can play with to get it the way that you want it to be, and gives you the right numbers, whether you have that specific area that you need to target, or the specific openings that you need to target and stuff like that, or the number of panels that you should use and stuff like this. And you can even make it sort of like automated, that it could go through a generative design optimizing for these parameters. These are the tools that very few people comparatively can use. I know you can see a lot of like blog posts and stuff about them, but there's not that many really people that can use this kind of stuff. One of the nice things about like advanced architecture design courses in like Columbia University and stuff like that is that they're trying to produce more of these people that know these different paradigms. I think these are just incredibly valuable tool, and one person, and every firm should at least have one person that understands these things. They can push and pull, they can, mix the pot and shows, that, oh, we can do this for this design that you just imagined. Let me show you how it works. And then if it didn't work, we'll figure out some other way.
Who are some of the leaders in this movement of generative design and generative thinking?
I can't give you a solid answer on this one. I've been following blog posts and stuff like that, but it's very sporadically.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm generally like really bad with names too.
Sure.
I read stuff and I forget about it later. The only thing that I can remember is that, oh, this is possible. And then I have to look it up later. I think there are people that are much better than me than to answer that question. One of the firms that I recently learned about is Evolve Lab, that they're starting doing some really interesting, cool stuff. It's actually this whole paradigm is becoming popular enough that there are companies out there just with business models around developing these kind of tool sets for Dynamo, or like just providing it as a service, that this is what we can do for you.
And so the primary tool sets being, is it still Dynamo, Grasshopper that you would think generative design, or is that more C#, Python?
You could go crazy with it, because you have like powerful platforms like Unity, that if you know C#, you can get into that and do whatever you want to do. It gives you a 3D world to play with. You have to pick the tools for the challenge that you have, and the kind of work that you have to do. Like some of them answers is a small script in pyRevit, some of them is a Dynamo solution, the other one is a bigger script and application inside Unity, or VR solution or anything like that. So I don't think the tools should be the top priority. It's just, where do you want to get? What you want to do is most important than the tools. When you figure out exactly what you want to do and what you want to create, then you go research and find the right tools to do it. And you try it, test a few things, and then you'll figure out how you want to do it. And then evolve over time. Like you might start with a tool, but then in a couple of years completely change your tool set, tool chain, and create something else. To save more time and be efficient and stuff like that. But I think the critical thing is that just having what you want to do in the eyesight, that this is where I want to get. You don't know that. A lot of people, I think, make this mistake of falling in love with the tools. They see something, oh my god, this is so cool. They just see the 3 feet in front of them. And then what you want to do at the end of the day is like the most important thing. Like when I was at school, I taught a lot of my friends how to use 3D Studio and do renderings and stuff like this. I was really good at it, but I never made money out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm like, what I want to do, this doesn't get me there. It excites me to learn about it and see how things work and learn how game engines work and stuff like this. And I think this is the knowledge that can help me do other stuff in the future better. But this tool chain, I don't want to adopt it because I don't want to get there. Like, I don't want to go into the game design business. It's very cool. I still follow people with like sketches of game designs and game design studios and stuff like that. But it's not where I want to be. It's just a different type of work. I don't think I'm right for that kind of work.
Okay.
So I think it's really good to like know, where do you want to get and not get distracted by the coolness of a new tool and stuff, and really see the value and decide whether you should adopt it or not.
Okay. What would be one piece of advice that you could give to, I guess, students in my position where you're kind of torn between two things that seem like they're at odds, architecture, programming, and how do you have a student kind of figure out the path they need to go on and consolidate these things?
I don't know. One piece of advice that I always follow myself is that you hear and read a lot about the outside world, but that's not what the outside world is. You need to figure out what excites you. I don't want to say go learn Python.
Mm-hmm.
But if writing a piece of program excites you and you sleep and thinking about how you could make this better and stuff like that, that's something that you definitely have to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Find these things that excite you, follow them, even if they are on the surface completely unrelated, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the actual education that you have, right? And then you go out in the world and you find somebody that is willing to give you a chance to put all those things together and get something out of it. You either create a business around it yourself if nobody else is, doing this, or you see the value of it in everything else, or you figure out the right combination. Like there are 5 different things that you love. Maybe you can find 3 of these things in combination as a skill set to each other that you can really improve and show that you can add value and do something cool with it. And then once you get to that point, I'm 100% sure that you can find a place that would hire you. You might have to change cities, go to a different country, go to a different, place in the world to get to that point. But there is a place for that kind of work. Because the world, especially I think it's one of the best times in the history of human beings for this.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can almost do anything out there these days. I don't think architecture students should go and study architecture design and then just go work with Revit 8 hours a day and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
At what excites you, do that. But I think there are a lot more things that we can do to challenge ourselves to create better outcomes and better products and better buildings and kind of like poke this world around. Like we're at the edge of the world. I always like to be at the edge of this bubble and I'm just want to poke around and see what areas, where more I can go and what more I can learn and stuff like that. Maybe a lot of them I don't end up using. Like I learned C++ way back when I started programming. I never really ended up using it professionally, but the knowledge that I gained throughout the computer science knowledge that I gained throughout that exercise helped me throughout my life with everything else that I touched on computers. That skill set, there's a portion of that skill that always will help you in other stuff. So it's never a waste to learn something that is fairly connected to what you want to learn. Like if you like music, a lot of musicians learn different instruments.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all their favorites, but the skill set that they collect, the things that they learn, everything else helps them with the original and also making music as a whole. That's I guess the best example that I can say. But the best advice would be this, to summarize, is just that find the things that you like to do, find things that excites you. Don't let whether you can find a job or not disencourage you from what you like to do. No, this is at the end of the day, nothing in the outside world, no manager, no company can keep you motivated to do work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a love that's almost guaranteed to be, you're almost guaranteed to be heartbroken. Because at the end of the day, the company that you work for is a business.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a certain amount of care that they have for you. At the end of it, they're like, well, we don't need you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's done. So I think investment in the love for what you really want to do and getting that to grow is a lot more powerful, because at any time, if you leave a company, there's somebody else that you can work for. There's this other thing that you can do. And working on those skills and create a unique skill set out of them is a lot more valuable than actually following the path that everybody else has created before you.
Mm-hmm.
right? Because a lot of the people that are created this path is, I don't know, 30 years old, and we are still shoving people through it. But
Mm-hmm.
when you actually get out of this, there's no guarantee that there's going to be a job for it. Like a lot of people went through the architecture school, never touched Revit, and then when they come out of the market, everybody wants people that knows Revit. Well, you lost time, and that's a big one of the things that's also a little bit cynical that I always advise to other people is that understand that universities are also businesses. Um, they don't they create a program because there's popularity for it and then they make money out of it. There's no guarantee that you learn these skills and then come out of it and you have a guarantee for a job. No.
Mm-hmm.
Just understand why you're learning what you're learning. And if you need to skip a bunch of it, skip it, by all means. That's why people who skipped school and dropped out of school are still successful. Because that's not critical. They followed what they loved and they fought hard for it and they lost a bunch of times. By the end of the day, they still won. Because, there's unlimited amount of energy when you love something to do. I know for a fact that I will never leave computers, ever.
Mm-hmm.
There are machines that you tell them what to do and they do it for you. There's a bunch of stuff that I have to learn over time and learn new languages and new ways of doing things and new ways of computing and whatnot. But I know this is always going to be part of me. Other stuff can change. Like I know I love the tangible fact, like this wood table. I love touching this wood table. Like this is something that I love to do. So these are the stuff that I don't want to lose out. That's why I loved architecture, because I clearly remember the first time I decided I want to do architecture as a program was that when I saw a wall section. I love the complexity of this, how many levels of knowledge that you need to have just to design this wall section. How things are coming together, it needs to be coordinated, and the ducts that are going through it and everything else. This complexity excites me. One of the things when I went to the engineering world, one of the things that I missed was this.
Mm-hmm.
Walking around and I don't see, like I love when I work in architecture companies and I see the different finishes every day at the office and, their materials and they're testing new lightings and new furniture and stuff like this. Like I love these things. Or just going through the magazines and whatnot. That's the part of me that I missed when I went to the engineering world. I realized this is too much engineering. And I had this idea that they're amazingly efficient, and they weren't. And like, oh, okay, so everywhere in the world is pretty much the same thing because we're human beings.
Yeah.
There's a level of there's certain things that we want to do, and there's certain things that we just don't want. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you're not willing to do that because it's just too much time and effort and everything else.
Very cool.
It's honestly.
That was a really awesome answer to my question. Thank you for that. That was cool.
Amen. Absolutely. I hope. Well, I think you are the type of people that have that tingle inside you, like this thing that you're like, it drives you, and you are studying architecture, but at the same time you're also going into VR and learning programming languages and everything else because there's something inside you that's not satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to learn new things. This is incredible. Don't let that die. Because if that dies, you're just another cog in the machine.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really, we don't need cogs in the machines. Each one of us should spend 4 hours a day being cog in the machine and 4 hours out of the day just playing around and, poking and learning new things and stuff. That's how I'm really seeing it. Like this shouldn't be separated from each other because the other side, the poking around, is the soul. Like if you take that out of this business, then you have a bunch of people that are just sitting behind a computer and doing the exact same thing day in and day out.
That's not fun.
That's not fun. That's not how we should run the world.
Not at all. Well, Ihsan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This has been a fantastic experience for me. I would very much so like to have this recording afterwards so I can go back and reference it for my own benefit. I did have one more question.
Uh-huh.
What kind of music do you like to listen to whenever you're coding?
Okay, that's a huge thing for me. I see a lot of people sitting outside having their headphones on and listening to music when they're doing stuff. I can't do that. Oh. I've never listened to music when I was studying or coding or anything like that. The only times that I can listen to music is when I'm doing something that's repetitive. that I've
Okay.
done 10 times before, and I'm really fast at it, and I don't really need to. Like when I'm thinking, it takes my whole brain, I think. Like it doesn't really leave for other stuff. Any processing power. I don't know. I always joke about it that I'm a single core CPU.
Okay. That's funny.
The musics that I love, I grew up listening to Pink Floyd and space
Okay.
rock and stuff like that. So that's the type of music that I generally listen to. But I try to be like I like jazz a lot, and
Yeah.
I like to sort of like expand and listen to more music and whatnot. I just listen to a lot of podcasts as much as I can. Those are super helpful. But those are like for driving time and for lunchtime and other stuff like walking to work and that kind of stuff. But when I'm actually like sitting down and coding, because half the time I'm just cursing myself, like, why did I do this? And I can't really like focus on something else at the same time.
Right.
Like arguing with the computer. Oh damn, why did he do it? Like
That makes a lot of sense. Maybe I should try not listening to music. Maybe I'll get more
I
done.
have my buddy. He's completely different. Like he can't.